This is the Logitech MX Master 3 mouse. The M stands for Master and the X stands for Extreme. This is the Logitech Master Extreme Master 3 mouse. I think this is a review. The Master series by Logitech. Advanced wireless mouse. Mag speed, ultra fast scrolling. Windows, Mac, and Linux. You know, I'm like, oh, I have no idea what this MX means. Let's see. Master every project with a series of products that revolutionize your process and get you focused and in your flow. And then French. This $100 7-button mouse was released in September 2019, I think. Who cares, right? They don't make them with trackballs anymore. Fair warning, I'm not that into specs, so I will avoid mentioning that it has 4,000 DPI of tracking whatever that could possibly mean. 4,000 DPI of tracking resolution with its darknet laser sensor. Experience the speed and precision of mag speed, magnetic scrolling. Could the M mean mag? Been using this for a couple months. I have no idea what it actually means. The last model's tracking difference was 4,000 DPI. So why is it 87% more accurate? 87% more accurate compared to what? Spoilers, I like this mouse. It's definitely the biggest mouse I've ever used. If you're not used to using a large mouse, it might feel weird at first, but I got used to it with a change to my setup, so...
Let's take a trip to the 90s and talk about mouse pads.
They won't do anything to help with tracking. They probably won't do much to save the pads on the actual mouse. I'm using this vintage soft pad to save my wrist because I was getting a red patch on this wrist pad area of my wrist pad here. I use this mouse pad because it's the softest one that I have. The way this mouse has buttons that go all the way to the edge makes me think you're not supposed to let your wrist touch the table, but I guess I have slouchy habits that I need to defend myself against. Also, if you care about your tabletops, you might want a mouse pad. Actually, I don't care that much, but I'm not going out of my way to destroy them either. So just some highlights. This is the mode shift button. When I first started using it, I was a little confused as to why I couldn't map it to anything, but this button's purpose is to switch this from a free spinning mode to a ratcheted mode, which you can actually hear. Free spinning mode is silent. You get this little increments you can click, but it's not really good when you're trying to scan a document because it gets stuck. It's kind of inconsistent when you're spinning fast, but it's not meant to spin fast. Whereas free spin is just sort of freely will just spin until it slows down to nothing. When it gets to the end in ratchet mode, it kind of does this click and then pops back. You hit it, clicks. So this is always this kind of invisible feeling. Not quite sure if invisible is the right word, but this horizontal scroll kind of feels heavier. It doesn't do the infinity scroll. It's just kind of like more weighted. I've always wanted this horizontal scroll. When I really wanted to have a horizontal scroll was before the trackpad even existed. I got so used to doing, like, you hold shift and you do this, and that's how you would horizontal scroll. I keep my trackpad on the left, so I'm using my trackpad. I still like having the buttons, I like having the options. I always think it's good to have options, because when you realize you're fatiguing, you can change it up. Oh, I am so impressed by you right now, honey. So typically with these buttons, you go back and forth like you're in a browser, and you map it to undo and redo. It's very convenient with the browser, but so is a 2-finger swipe. Things that this does that take the place of a command you would be doing with your left hand, or gesture that's easy to mix up with other gestures. For example, expose. I have expose mapped to tapping this, the scroll wheel. On all the slimmer Mac keyboards, they added function as a way to double use things for playback and brightness and volume. Expose was always, ever since it existed, it was one of the most convenient things in the world. And for me, it's just spread out everything and let me see the desktop. And function reaching over to F11 is not a fun thing to do. That's very easy for you to remember. Oh, I just click this and I expose. So there's a little area right here where your thumb goes, that's the gesture button. When I click it, it switches between apps. Supposedly it does other things that relate to mission control, but all I can really get it to do is switch between apps, which I think is good enough. I think it's one of those things that if I remember, it could be useful since I use this for expose. But all the other things it was claiming that you were doing, all these like gestures, I think it's you click it and you do a gesture. I never really got it to work. I don't know if it's in software, but I don't really like things that are like that thing that does one thing multiple ways depending on how you do it. So it's got this USB-C for charging and this light that comes on at at some point when it's probably low. Unlike Apple mice, if you go to Bluetooth, it's not going to tell you what the percentage is. Kind of just gotta trust the light. You can plug it in, you can use it while it's charging. Obviously, if you're using this in a travel situation, you want to charge it. And I'm sure I'll cut this if it's not true, but I'm sure the software probably has a way to tell you what your charge level is if you choose to install the software that comes with the mouse. But in my case, I haven't installed the software because I find that I don't really need it. You can remap at the OS level, you can map stuff to this, and for the most part, that's what I need. I have a lot of other input devices, so the whole idea of remapping this to specific application things is not something I don't think I'm going to use. I was originally going to install the software that goes with this mouse, whatever it's called, I'll look it up later. But I didn't because there was this thing about a Windows security flaw in it, and I just thought, well, if I'm not going to use it, maybe I should. It's called Flow. Transfer text and files between Windows and Mac. Not really sure why you'd want your mouse to be responsible for transferring text files. That's the kind of thing that makes me not want to install the software. You can plug it in, it works right away. You don't really need to install the software. If you're a Linux user who lives in a constant state of without Bluetooth, there's a dongle that will plug into anything, like all pre-Bluetooth USB connectors. And yes, it's plug and play on Linux. This is literally the first time I tried doing it, and it just worked. So in the back, you got your power. You got this input switch. You could set it up to be between 3 different computers and just tap the button and it switches computer 2, computer 3, and there's none of that cross Bluetooth situations where you're clicking on something and you got another computer open, you got Bluetooth on and it's clicking on that computer.
And now for the main event, we have the Logitech MX vs Mighty Mouse.
Before this, I was using the Mighty Mouse because it was the least worn out of my decent mice. It's smooth and comfortable. Some people may be like, give me teardrop or give me death, but I like it for mousing around. I think it balances my hand better to avoid that rub on my wrist area. Buttons 1 and 2 work great for clicking, but the scroll ball is annoying. Okay, it's not awful or anything. It was made before scrolling used momentum physics, so it's different. It stops on a dime, or whoever coined that phrase needs to get the quarter out of your screen door on a battleship. I remember being annoyed when things started springing and drifting about around 2007 or 2000, whenever. I think it was like Leopard. Definitely prefer momentum. This mouse is bad if you have to do a lot of vertical scrolling because it's fatiguing. Ratcheted mode on the Logitech is more like how this mouse is all the time. So unless you're editing images, you're gonna want the Logitech because horizontally they're both slow, but the Mighty Mouse is more coordinated with 360-degree movement. Supposedly this was a 4-button mouse. It was like I don't know, there's supposedly, like, I'll disable things that I don't use. If I find that I'm using it more often by accident than when I mean to, this feels like a 2-button mouse, but in my memory, like you pinched it, you squeezed the 2 together or something like that? I'll put a little diagram here that says where the buttons are on this mouse. I think this is a 4-button mouse, but really I've only used it as a 2-button mouse. Bonus tip. I know that the Mighty Mouse is 15 years old, but this tab works as a battery removal tool. The Magic Mouse 2009 also works similarly. With the newer ones, you can't remove the battery, so who cares, right? Is this even relevant?
Screen door on a battleship.
It was always such a pain. You would do this, and you'd be like, how do I get this, like, you know, you're trying to, everything was always in so tight. The keyboards had a thing where you could pull them out with the little tabs so the batteries would pop out, but these never did. And it was always so frustrating. It took forever for me to figure out that you could use this to pop it. What do I know? Is this on purpose? Is this a battery removal tool? I feel like, you know, they could have said like battery removal. Like, it's on the inside, you don't see it.
Logitech MX vs Magic Mouse.
I don't like the Magic Mouse. I think it's the worst of both worlds. It's not ergonomic like a mouse should be. When I use it, I have to pretend my hand is a dead fish and flat palm it to avoid fatigue because I tend to grip both sides and lift it up. And its surface supports limited gestures. So it's kind of like you got a thing you can do gestures, but you're very limited what you can do. And yeah, to go like this is very convenient, but also to use a scroll wheel is very convenient too. So I think really what it comes down to is just this kind of, this is how I tend to mouse around. I tend to lift it up. So this is technically a 2-button mouse and it scrolls good and it's got gestures which are better than the extra buttons on the Mighty Mouse. Okay, for my for my trackpad, I actually tape it to my desk.
Logitech MX vs Magic Trackpad.
I know a trackpad isn't a mouse. This is my video, so get off my lawn. I want to talk about this trackpad, and I had to make a title that was searchable, and humans don't search the term input device. I like this, but I think trackpads are very fatiguing. I think using them for an extended period of time, You're just floating it over. It's very fatiguing. Where this is great for gestures, scrolling, zooming, rotating, swiping. It's all great. This is my pick for that. It's got like twice as many gestures as the mouse. Yeah, I don't use them all, but I find them more useful. I think they're a little more easier to remember. The thing that was great about this, and like all trackpads, was the 2-finger click. You don't really think about it now, but before this, trackpads had buttons. And left, right, oh, I'm doing this, oh, I'm clicking. It was not, I didn't like it. You know, there's a lot more mice being used with laptops back then. Interesting thing about trackpads, though, that I found out is it's very easy to use a trackpad with your left hand. If you're right-handed, the trackpad has this acceleration you just whip through and it feels very natural. I would say way smoother scrolling through things and pulling and stopping and going, oh, wait, let me go back. In terms of this, it's a little more control. I think if you're like specifically like reading something, if you're not racing through, I would tend to use the mouse. In general, I'm not trying to whip through 35 pages of a document. So to compare being in free spin mode and being like, look how fast I can just whip through this document. Well, this isn't a realistic use case of like how you would go through a document. But sometimes I will arbitrarily switch between devices to avoid fatigue, which is why I use multiple input devices. So the takeaway is that you don't have to settle for one input device. Even if I had 2 mice on the right, maybe a teardrop, maybe one of those vertical mice, it's always good to have options so you don't get repetitive strain. It's not blow your mind good, but how good could a mouse be? It's a bunch of little things that add up for the years worth of mousing around we might do in a lifetime. And really it's about it being ergonomic, it's comfortable, everything's easy to use. Obviously it's good at clicking the regular 1 and 2 buttons. I feel like I glaze over that. In comparing all of this, I would say the Mighty Mouse is a better mouse than I gave it credit for. The Magic Mouse is, yeah, about the same level as dissatisfaction as I always had with it. And the Magic Trackpad is great, but it doesn't replace a mouse. It's good at all the things a mouse isn't good at. But I would still want a mouse. I wouldn't want to rely on a trackpad. Is the Logitech MX3 the best mouse I've ever used? Probably. Maybe it is. I think it is. I'm used to using Apple default mice. I have a Logitech teardrop mouse that I really liked. It's corded. It still exists. So there is no one input device to rule them all. There's a bunch of different ways to do the same thing, and mixing it up is good for ergonomics. You want in that set? You can have it. Aw, baby, you want to be here? You want to be in here? You better not just be fucking with me. We're gonna eat? Okay. Oh. All right. Okay.